So we're going to have to retrench, redo the foundation of the business. Then we can start it back up again.
Yeah.
Cause lots of grumbles. Cause lots of. They should have known that, right? So and in the CEO's mind, he wanted to be able to be transparent, share the journey, the direction, the vision, but it backfired. That's exactly what happened. Everything you said.
And it comes from a place of good intent. Like the CEO is trying to say, hey, I want my team to be aligned. I want my team to know. This is probably where a good parallel with search and rescue comes in, is like, we don't make a plan that just cannot be adjusted. We don't say like, we know the patient is at these coordinates. We know we're going to need exactly this gear. And if anything changes, get on the radio and let everybody know the whole new plan. Like, you do that 20 times on every call out. What we do is we say, the coordinates we have are here. As those change, we'll update it on our software and we can see those live. This is the scope of possibilities that we think could happen with this patient. Here's the possible routes. We send different teams up different routes. This team's hiking, this team's climbing the face, this team's coming in on a helicopter, this team is going up with dirt bikes. And sometimes the team we think is going to get there first gets there first. And there's no surprises. And it is what we thought. And then there's other times where we go, man, we thought the helicopter was going to get there first, but they had to turn around because there's wind. And then we thought the climbers were going to get there next because it's short, but there's not a lot of good protection on that route, and they're going slower than we thought. And so the dirt bikers got there first. Well, they don't have a lot of room for gear. So did we send medical stuff with them? So the capability that you have to really get good at is not prediction. It's about managing optionality and having a team that can say, it could be this, or it could be this, or it could be this. We're going to run a process to diagnose the market, test a product, and then deal with some differences. That's what we want to be good at as leaders and as a team. So we don't have to say, oh my gosh, our slide deck was wrong. We need well, get used to that feeling. Like we want to get good at exploration and adjustment, not pitches and perfection.
Welcome, everyone. We're back to Fearless Founders. And we have Nate McBride here. Ike and I are very, very happy. Nate and I go back a long ways, and Ike is getting to know him. We were just talking about his background, and I said, wait. Let's just start right now, because this man is a little bit of a renaissance man. He can do many, many things, including helping people safely off mountains and in danger, to being able to help them in their investments as a VC or a reformed VC and an operator. So Nate's going to help with us have discussions all about life and learnings. So Nate, go with that story again, real fast on the background.
Yeah, I mean, great to be with both of you. And yeah, my background is straightforward, but it's been one that has been a lot of fun for me. I grew up in Minnesota. Spent a lot of time in the cold, building snow caves, sleeping in some snow caves over the years, just for fun. Came out to Utah, spent a lot of time in the mountains. A lot of my life has been spent in these kind of challenging, austere environments where you kind of push yourself to be your best, and you kind of realize you can take on environments that you weren't sure you could take on a week ago. Whether it's cold or steep mountains or rivers that are challenging, it's been a lot of fun. So that kind of childhood, being in the outdoors, eventually sparked a lot of interest in what I do now, which is a lot of search and rescue. Been doing that for 5 years out here in Utah. We have one of the more active teams in the United States. We do between 100 and 200 call outs every year. So when 911 gets a call for a rescue in the mountains or in the river, we're attached to the sheriff's office, and we'll get dispatched for those. And so we do over 50 types of rescues out here in Utah. We've got, as I mentioned, we've got rivers, we've got mountains, we've got big lakes, pretty much any environment. We've got caves, any environment you can imagine doing a rescue in. So from a hobby and passion standpoint, and we could talk about categories of life today too. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But from a passion standpoint, that is a lot of what I spend my time doing. Also on one of the, I'd say, top 5 intermediate recreational soccer teams in Utah County. No, I'm just kidding. That we're like, it's a very weird flex. No, we have a lot of fun, but I love playing soccer too. But yeah, on the professional side, I've spent a lot of time on finance and strategy. That's where I've really built my career. Started at a small public company that was growing really quickly when I finished college. Spent about 5 years there, and then moved into the venture side. And I've been in venture for about, let's see here, 15 years or so. And a lot of that's been with family offices. So it's been a kind of a specific category of investment, but in an environment that's pretty flexible with different objectives and different priorities over the years, which has been a lot of fun. So that's a quick summary of me and what I've done in those different categories, and excited to be here to talk to you guys about it today.
That's fantastic. I mean, how many people can say that? Hi, Ike, look at that background. Talk about learning. There's so many stories you could weave together, but you've also seen, and many of our listeners and watchers starting their own company, they're right in the throes of all of this. And just because there's so many topics we could talk about, just even one thing that comes to your mind as you looked at all of these businesses that you may have invested in, and you see a recurring theme as to what they're doing well or what they're not doing well, that you can advise and say, hey, for those listening, this is what I'd recommend you focus on.
Yeah.
What would that be?
Oh man, I love that question. A couple things come to mind. The first one is a broad lesson about life and business and how they weave together. We tend to categorize those separately, but the reality is like life forces us to manage those together. So the first emphasis I would share is that when we pattern our career after someone, we might look at a titan of our specific industry. We might look at a company we love. We might look at a model that was really compelling to us and want to replicate it. A level above that, in my mind, is that we have to start with someone's life that we want to emulate. One thing I've seen many times, this is applied to me too, I've seen many times is that people look at an industry leader and they go, man, I love their career. I love their leadership. I love their impact they've had in this industry. And then they go chasing that model, that person, that approach. And they get a few years down the road and they realize, wait a minute, this thing I love professionally comes with trade-offs that I don't want to make, whether it's with your health, whether it's with your relationships, your personal passions, those kinds of things. There's times for sprinting in life for sure. I'm not saying there's not, but if you're not careful, that like myopic pursuit of that one narrow focus can really lead you to trading off things that you don't want to trade off. So I would just encourage, and I've learned for myself, that it's really, really important to pattern your life after a life and not your life after a career, because you end up dealing with those variables later anyways, and it's better to start with them.
Wow. What do you think of that, Ike? Huh?
Nice. Yes. My gears are turning for sure.
So that
I've seen the same, Nate. I've seen too many quote unquote successful leaders have broken marriages, children who are yearning to be with their dad or mother but cannot because of the separation. I see a lot of physical neglect. I've also seen addictions all the way to obesity and all the mile markers for kidney failure. You name it, and just hollow semblance of the charismatic young person that I used to know.
Yeah,
that's all that's left in the pursuit of success. And they may have indeed made a lot of money, but the money focus is dangerous. I get it.
Well, and I unfortunately, I think it sometimes can lead to an overcorrection where we can sense that we've misbalanced those categories. And so we pursue that one category even more to like overcompensate. Like, well, I've spent so many years, trying to get $1 billion valuation, which by the way, is not always even in our control, right? I've been pursuing this one goal so hard and like, I've got to make all this time and effort worth it. So I'm going to pursue it even harder. And you can lead to this really vicious cycle if you're not careful. So that would be one, is just, be careful to not become like, we'll get into the categories if you guys want to hear them. They're the categories I find for myself. But, be careful not to become like a fat genius or like a rich loner or these things that show like this imbalance where you're like, man, I've really nailed this one category so well, but like my kid wants to play in the park and I can't, or like I've got all this money, but I don't really know how to like make somebody feel comfortable or like have them talk to me about something difficult, right? Those things are going to be critical, especially raising kids and navigating relationships. So for me, my company is kind of named after these categories, and it's a constant reminder to me of what I want to keep in front of me. So the company is named Fresh Pie, and there's no E at the end. So it's this concept of like a circle. Okay. So the Fresh Pie is family, relationships, education, spirit, health, passions, and income. And all of them are important. And I think income is very easy and understandable to focus on. We all need it. But if we're not careful, we will miss those other categories. And life has a way of reminding us that we've missed them. So I've tried to keep those in front of mind by focusing on this fresh pie concept, which has been important in my life.
Fantastic. What a great model.
That's great. Let's get into those pieces of pie.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we do, I will say one other thing on the business. If we dive into the business analysis side of the question you asked me, what do founders get wrong sometimes? So if we focus on the income categories, first and say, well, as they build their company and they're trying to do that well, what do they get wrong? I think one of the things they get wrong is if you think of revenue as a garden, it's really easy to just see that revenue is growing and want to water everything. But the reality is we need to separate wasteful weeds from productive plants. Revenue is a garden where, and this is the hippiest reference you're ever going to hear me.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
But it is a garden of this mixture, and we need to be a little smarter than just saying, hey, there's a bunch of green stuff growing in a box. Let's just keep going. That's impressive because a lot of times nothing grows or just the weeds grow. But the next level of growth is to just understand, hey, wait a minute, is this really worth it? How much water have I really put into this? How much time have I put into this? Is it really worth the time I put in? Are these productive plants or are they wasteful weeds? That's where a lot of the productive growth comes from in a company is having the inputs and outputs a little more calibrated than just, hey, we're dumping fuel on this and stuff is happening. And it might sound silly to summarize it that simply, but we focus so much on revenue in the early stages of venture that once revenue shows up, we kind of just throw everything else out and go, it's working. And we start growing this garden of a mixture that we don't always want.
I think
we talked about this.
There's a great lesson here, right? Because I know a lot of founders who has the garden, like that they have incomes, but some of them are from the customers that are not going to take them to the next level. They spend 80% of the energy to satisfy those customers, but it's impossible to replicate. They're not going to help you scale. Like that's what you're talking about, right? Like yes. Identify those revenue sources, whether it's a customer type or type of service, right? And try to design your garden where it's going to grow so you can replicate and find more of the unified profiles of customers and where the money is coming from.
Yes.
Am I something else said there?
Yes, I think you've got it exactly right. The notion that there's just a big aggregate revenue number and an aggregate cost number is easy to fall into, especially early stage when you got a small team, you're kind of looking at everything together. But we have to be intentional about knowing what products and what margins are happening within each of those numbers and saying, okay, this revenue number is actually a function of 4 different products and 3 of them aren't really worth our time. Like that's kind of a hard realization to come to, because you might think, oh, we're diversified across all these different products. But this is a real story. I grew lettuce one summer. I'm not a huge gardener, but I tried growing lettuce one time, and I'm not talking like devil's lettuce. I'm talking real lettuce. I tried growing a bunch of lettuce, and I spent the whole summer like watering this lettuce. I was like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. I get to the end of the summer, I put all this water, time, checking it, weeding this little box garden. I get to the end of the summer and I tried it, and it was bitter and terrible. And I was like, I've wasted 4 months on like what probably turned out to be like $2 of lettuce. Like this was not worth the trade-off to me. Since then I pivoted more to this is the entrepreneurship term showing up in gardening, but I've turned more to like peppers and stuff that's just more fun, strawberries that my kids can eat off the vine, stuff like that. My kids are never like craving lettuce in the backyard. So when we grow our companies, just being aware of like, it's got to be more intentional than just, revenue is growing, because what seems like really small distinctions now turn into divisions later. They turn into whole product lines later. They turn into whole teams later on. And it's a lot easier to see early, hey, this margin doesn't make a lot of sense, or these customers are a big headache. Like you said, like, do we really want to turn that into a team or a division? Like, we may not, especially if there's not a strategic reason to do it.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of an overview of the fresh pie concept. One other thought that comes to mind for founders is a little bit more of a strategy consideration that I've seen over and over in industries. I'm a believer that you should build your company to withstand turbulence as a whole. You shouldn't get into the business of like Nostradamus and guessing everything that's going to be happening in the next 5 years. I always kind of smile during those parts of like a conference or a panel where everyone's like, let me tell you what's going to happen in the next 18 months. I'm like, I wish we had the tape from 18 months ago, because I'm not sure it would be right. But to that point of like building a structure that can withstand change, the way I think of that is this, and it's been a very helpful framework for me. If you imagine a ratio of value creation on top and assets required on the bottom, industries have very different profiles of that ratio. Okay, so I would describe them in three categories. There's an A-shaped ratio, a V-shaped ratio, and an I-shaped ratio. Okay, so an A-shaped ratio would be like it requires a lot of assets and competencies and skills to deliver one value. That would be like the airline industry. Okay, they've got to get a bunch of planes going, a bunch of fuel going, deal with unions, bunch of technology up and running. They got to deal with customers. There's so many things to do before you can push a flight out. And not surprisingly, the airline industry overall has like lost money since its existence. It's extraordinarily difficult, as you would all guess. That's because it's shaped that way. Ton of assets and companies to build one thing. The V, then you can of course surmise like that would be like a Google, right? With a few assets and capabilities, you can now sell to all kinds of verticals. You're a V-shaped company. And then the third one I call like the ADHD companies. Like they're just like random assets and competencies mixed together, right? So there's just like 10 different product lines going and they're all kind of disconnected. So if you kind of have like the squirrel complex, that's kind of where I would put that. As much as possible, if we can structure our companies to be like that V shape, where with just one or two assets and competencies, we can serve a ton of different markets, man, that gives us a lot of capability to withstand turbulence and change and surprises that we didn't see coming. When we're shaped this way and something comes in and disrupts our market, man, we've got to rearray everything we're doing to just get that one product out the door again. That's a recipe for disaster, right? So that I would say, as much as possible, founders look for that kind of a structure in your company when you can, because sometimes it can save you. You can pivot to another market, another geography, service instead of a physical product, and a lot of times it can save your company.
I love that a lot. And just because you think through business models so much, when would you recommend a startup person seek funding? Because I tell people, you can be independent if you don't take any external money. Don't take it. There's a lot of headache that comes with it. Yeah. But when would you tell them to go get funding? Just a general, it's a general question.
My first question for that, or my first diagnostic question in response to that is always about that person's life. To go back to that opening theme, like if this company is running perfectly in 10 years, what is it doing for you? Are you able to go to kids' games? Are you able to take vacations when you want? Are you able to work 20 hours and enjoy the other half of the week? If that's really, really what you're trying to do, you've really got to be careful about taking, a lot of other people's money, because you owe an obligation to them to perform, and to perform not just eventually, but on the timeline they really want. And there are trade-offs that come with receiving other people's money, right? You've got to become a little bit more of a high growth company and less of a lifestyle business in many cases. And if you're trying to build a great lifestyle, you don't want to go down a track where you can't do that. And so I would say just make sure they've got clarity on that first. And if they say, oh man, I can't wait to just like tone it down because I've got these young kids, I'd be like, do you really want to take a bunch of venture money right now? Because your kids are like 2 and 4 and 6. Your next 10 years are going to be pretty wild on every front. And as long as you know that, that's fine. But like, I'd say that's number one. And then from a business model standpoint, just gradually opening the spigot to match your progress is critical. Like, don't make it too binary where you raised a bunch of money too early because one, you got obviously ownership issues and you've diluted yourself more than you need to, but moreover, you've also kind of hidden the feedback mechanism that founders need, that we all need, to diagnose our companies correctly. The market is the right answer. We can sit around and guess in a boardroom or in a meeting, but the market has the right answer. We don't want to keep ourselves from that. We don't want to prevent ourselves from getting that feedback. So once we've got that feedback, that's a different thing. But yeah, that would be my answer to that.
Fantastic.
Thank you for that. Just one more tiny bit you mentioned, but I wanna double click on that before we move on to the next piece. You mentioned the squirrel concept, the complex.
Yeah.
I talked to a lot of technical founders, and they have a lot of ideas, and they're builders, and they have, like you said, sometimes 4 or 5 different products. And I think if we go back to the V-shape value creation and ability to attack to different markets, different customer profiles, different types of value creation with the base product. We are definitely not saying, hey, have multiple products and they will give different options, right? Because every product gives the team attention deficit disorder. We like maybe as a founder you can understand all these products and you know what they are, but if you have a lot, it creates a lot of weight on the team to have these. So creating the V-shape is one product is what we're talking about, right, Nate?
Yeah, I the way I think of that is, so I think that lesson is, that's how I think of it as well. I would just put it slightly differently, which is, as the founder, you don't need to share every plan and eventuality in your head, because what we think is buy-in is actually a burden for the team. We think we're sharing it with the team so we can get buy-in, and we go, oh, I've got this team, I want to be transparent, I want them to know where I'm going, and so we share all of our ideas with them in that effort. Oftentimes what we've done is we've just shared the burden of leadership with them, and we shouldn't have done that. Then when we have to make a change later on, the team's going, wait a minute, I thought we were going to add this product next. And wait a minute, I thought we were going to go to this geography next. And what we were doing is you were sharing version 3 of your plans with them in what would eventually become version 10. And you've really got to be careful sharing all of that as a leader, because then every deviation from your plan becomes a miss. And every deviation becomes something that you have to communicate and make up with your team. And you spend your whole time communicating about reality versus vision versus plan, and you don't actually build anything. Yeah. And so I totally agree, Ike. Like, you really got to be careful about what you're actually focusing on first and what you're communicating with your team, because otherwise you get everybody going, wait a minute, which thing is the priority and which thing's first? And instead of keeping that to yourself, that is a burden you have to bear as a founder, is like, something stay in your head, not because you don't want your team to know, but because you don't want your team to have the burden of distraction. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
This just happened to a current client of mine that I'm coaching. Extrapolated their 3-year plan, high growth numbers, all of it, the alignments they would have to make. 6 weeks later, they had to call everyone back in and say, sorry, we're going to have to change it again, because we realized in order to gain the 3x growth, we found out that our fundamentals are wrong, and the foundation of which we built this business cannot accommodate growth and that volume of business. So we're going to have to retrench, redo the foundation of the business, then we can start it back up again.
Yeah.
Cause lots of grumbles, they should have known that, right? So, and in the CEO's mind, he wanted to be able to be transparent, share the journey, the direction, the vision, but it backfired. That's exactly what happened. Everything you said.
And it comes from a place of good intent. Like, the CEO is trying to say, hey, I want my team to be aligned. I want my team to know. This is probably where a good parallel with search and rescue comes in, is like, we don't make a plan that just cannot be adjusted. We don't say, like, we know the patient is at these coordinates. We know we're going to need exactly this gear. And if anything changes, get on the radio and let everybody know the whole new plan. Like, you do that 20 times on every call out. What we do is we say, the coordinates we have are here. As those change, we'll update it on our software and we can see those live. This is the scope of possibilities that we think could happen with this patient. Here's the possible routes. We send different teams up different routes. This team's hiking, this team's climbing the face, this team's coming in on a helicopter, this team is going up with dirt bikes. And sometimes the team we think is going to get there first gets there first. And there's no surprises. And it is what we thought. And then there's other times where we go, man, we thought the helicopter was going to get there first, but they had to turn around because there's wind. And then we thought the climbers were going to get there next because it's short, but there's not a lot of good protection on that route, and they're going slower than we thought. And so the dirt bikers got there first. Well, they don't have a lot of room for gear. So did we send medical stuff with them? So the capability that you have to really get good at is not prediction. It's about managing optionality and having a team that can say, it could be this, or it could be this, or it could be this. We're going to run a process to diagnose the market, test a product, and then deal with some differences. That's what we want to be good at as leaders and as a team. So we don't have to say, oh my gosh, our slide deck was wrong. We need, well, get used to that feeling. Like we want to get good at exploration and adjustment, not pitches and perfection.
Which result, before we go into your model, I still want to go into life's lessons. Why do people keep getting into trouble up in the mountains or in the wilderness? Why does this happen? Yes, I can understand a city slicker coming to the Utah mountains and not understanding altitude, not understanding the diurnal change in temperature that we in the high desert have. I get it. But why do locals get stuck in trouble? What do you see as lessons there? This is important, even though we're talking about business. I think we're talking about life here. Why do we keep getting into trouble?
Well, there are definitely some who, a story comes to mind. I'll share on that topic. There definitely are some people who it's the wrong place, wrong time. They have a heart attack in the mountains. They have a medical emergency that would have happened at home, and it just happens in the mountains. And it's just bad timing. So I've seen that. I've seen just unfortunate rockfall coming off mountains that were on a trail, and they were on the trail, and it was, it could have happened to me. It could have happened to anybody. But I would say oftentimes people they don't pack for the journey's possibilities. They pack for where they are. And when we're in our living rooms and we look up at a mountain, we go, boy, today's a nice sunny day. I think I'm going to go on a hike. And our living room is 70 degrees and we're wearing, like socks and a sleeveless shirt. And we feel like, I think I'll throw a couple waters in my bag and go hiking. I mean, a couple of years ago, we had a group that we went and rescued it was like 4 people in their 20s and a baby that left in May. Now in the valley here in Utah in May, the weather was pretty good. It was in the 70s and it was like 4 or 5 p.m. when they started this hike. It was not too far from Temp. It was on Baldy, actually, if you know where that is, Big Baldy, if you're out here in Utah. And they started up this hike with this baby who was just, I don't know, might have been a year old. They were all wearing shorts and t-shirts and tennis shoes. And they got up to the peak. And as they got close to the peak, they were waist high in snow. And the sun was down. And the temperature was 40 degrees colder than when they started. And so all of a sudden they're like, oh, this is a very different environment than what we were feeling in the valley, right? And so they called 911. We sent a medical team up in a helicopter, picked up the mother and the baby, flew them down, and then flew the others down. And luckily it wasn't any more serious than that because we were able to get some assets up there quickly. But the reality is people sometimes just pack for where they're at instead of the possibilities of where they're going. And if you look up there and go, okay, it's May here, it's in the 70s right now. In 4 hours, the sun will go down. I'm going to gain a few thousand feet of altitude. It's going to be windier up there. It's going to be more exposed. Man, it might be 40 degrees colder up there. It might take a while. I actually might need some good boots and some gaiters and some layers and some hot chocolate. And maybe I shouldn't bring this baby with me. I mean, there's all these other things that start surfacing once you think about the possibilities of the journey instead of where we are now. And the same is true with entrepreneurship, where if we go, well, right now we've got money and we've got a good attitude and we've got a lot of agreement with these founders that all think going 50-50 is going to be great and all these things that come to mind. And then they get a year in and someone has a life change and someone got bored and someone else got jealous and the market's not where we thought it was and we're running out of money and oh man, that's a whole different reality than where we were a year ago. And you've got to pack your documents and your plan and your discussions with context so that everybody can go together on this journey. And if we've got to take a different trail, I'm not surprising Binoy that Ike's coming in as a partner because we discussed what kinds of things might happen on this journey. And we go, oh, you know what? We got to make some changes. We're going to add an additional person earlier than we thought because stuff changed. Okay, no problem. And it's not, the presentation wasn't wrong. It was just, that's the trail that we discussed. And it was trail 2 of 4 that we thought might be possible.
See, that's beautiful. He did exactly what I wanted him to do, brought it back to business. It's exactly the case. I see it every time. Not only do I always tell people who say, hey, should I start this business? I'm really excited about this product or widget. I'll always say, know how to sell it first. Know how to sell it. If you don't start the business. Then number two, I always say, well, if you're going to do this alone, I think you're going to be lonely and under-resourced. But if you do it with somebody else, talk about all the divorce papers ahead of time. Talk about all the problems and anticipated issues way before time and have it written down so that later on when they say, no, you didn't say that. I thought you meant this. In writing, you've got all the predicaments as much as possible planned, like you said, for the possibilities that can go wrong or right.
Yes.
But they don't plan on that. Everyone's giddy with the excitement of starting something, and they see all the billboards and all the accolades for raising around from versus, like you said, the market. I don't care if you've raised money. Does the customer want it repeatedly? Do they stay with you? Do they tell other people about you? Now you've got something.
Yeah,
So,
raising money is just means that you've sold someone on an expectation, and selling someone on an expectation on its own. And it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy to raise rounds. It's very challenging, but ultimately it's a starting line of expectations. And once you've done that, if you're not ready to perform, and if you can't have those discussions, sometimes people don't want to have those discussions because they're like weird topics, and they're like, well, do I really want to like have a discussion about how a partnership breakup could happen at the beginning of this like honeymoon period we're in? It's like, well, if you can't have that discussion, you sure can't navigate the reality of that discussion. You have to be able to have the discussion about how dilution might happen. You might have to be able to have the discussion about, what if somebody leaves, or what if somebody gets divorced, or what happens if a big customer leaves us. I don't know if you know this, but there's resorts here in Utah this last winter that experienced less than half of their previous year's worst snowfalls. Look at the worst snowfalls in Utah's history. We were less than half of that. If you're the guy in the meeting, then they're like, hey, we're making all these plans for the future years. What's on everybody's mind? I mean, you feel kind of curmudgeonly being like, what if it's worse than everybody thinks, But the reality is like, reality gets a vote, and we all get opinions, but reality gets the final vote on this stuff. And you want to be able to at least have those discussions, be like, hey, we're starting this thing together. Like, what if the first 6 months is really terrible? What would the first, yes, all the things that can go right, we need to discuss that, but how are we going to handle that? And are you guys going to look to me or Benoit or Ike to fund that? How would that work? Oh, yeah, if anything happens, we'll look to Benoit. Or if anything happens, I have a friend. Or if anything happens, we're going to shut it down. Let's have some clarity on how that would work so that we can proceed accordingly and not be surprised and say, wait, I thought this was my career for the next 20 years, and someone else, it was a side project.
if nothing else, and our listeners and viewers are turned down by this conversation, then we have succeeded. We have succeeded in illuminating and educating beforehand all that needs to be anticipated and planned for and prepared before this hike to Everest Base Camp and then some, right? Thank you. Thank you for going there. Absolutely. I think it would be disservice if we didn't talk about this.
I agree. I think every difference between people can be bridged except one, and that is a different objective. If you have a different objective, you cannot bridge that. So if Ike and I are going on a road trip and we have different music preferences, we have different food preferences. One of us needs to stop every hour and the other one wants to go 8 hours without stopping and risk getting clots in their legs because they are just so driven, literally. Great. We can bridge all of those things, right? We can pack different food. We can alternate music. We can whatever. One of us can wear headphones if we have to. We can figure that out. The only thing we cannot bridge is if Ike is going to New York City and I'm going to Los Angeles. Eventually, you're going to make a turn, and it's the only difference you cannot bridge. Pretty much everything else you can bridge. And so, in entrepreneurship, you have to be really clear on do we have the same objective? Is your objective financial? Is it getting to a life you want to live? Is it getting an award? Is it being a billionaire? What's your objective? And if we share that objective, we can pretty much figure everything else out.
Beautifully said.
Wow.
Yeah.
correct? Oh, well said. We have so little time. Let's talk about this model of yours and the
Oh,
different
sure,
stages
yeah.
of learning. Yes,
Yeah.
quite interested. Take us into this world of yours, Nate.
Oh, well, the way I think about just that objective, starting with that again, starting with like, what is our life objective, not just our business objective, but what is our life objective? Because we're going to build a team that will generally have similar trade-offs to what we're asking them to make. If we're going to run a Elon Musk type company, we're expecting people to sleep on the warehouse floor all the time and sacrifice everything they can and build, this fast growing company. That's a very different culture than if we're trying to build like a successful plumbing company in our community and we want people to be able to coach their kids' games. Totally different trade-offs, totally different incentives. So the first objective is, do we view these categories of family and relationships and education and spirit and passions and health and income, do we view those generally the same? If we do, we probably have a pretty good foundation to go to our shared objective together. If we don't, then it goes back to that, like, eventually we're going to make a turn. We're going to go left or we're going to go right. And if we only need each other for the first 100 miles and we are explicit about like, hey, I need someone to help me for the first year building, and I understand we're not going to be like your long-term home, that's okay too. Like, you can hitchhike for a couple hours together, just don't fool ourselves into going beyond that. So that the model in my mind, in my life, is that fresh pie model. So those categories. So let's see here. I'm curious about where I want to start on it. I would say there's 4 R's and 4 are nots. Like, humans are designed to do 4 things, and we're designed to not do 4 things. So this is a part of my priorities for fresh pie. So number 1, as humans, we are designed to thrive in all areas of our life. And if we go back to just like how humans are naturally existing in nature, like, we're meant to be in shape. We're meant to be in the sunlight. We're meant to be in relationships, to be kind of in our tribe. Like, we're meant to thrive in all areas of life. Number 2, we're meant to create. Bino, I know that you're a musician. I've been a musician for a lot of my life, and that creation process is like, it's a hard to explain, but no less real phenomenon of life. Like, it is very fulfilling to create, and we should be creating in all those categories as much as we possibly can. It is just a fundamental truth of life, as people are happy when they're creating things. Number 3 is we're meant to be challenged. We're meant to be challenged because when we develop strength, we become more capable. We could stand in a parking lot and look at a peak and say, well, I don't want my legs to hurt, so I will just take the view from here. And that might be okay. But the irony is, when we hike more and we push ourselves and we get stronger, we become more capable of happiness in more environments. And so we trade off this like short-term misery of increased capability, developing increased capability, so that we can be happier in many more environments than we otherwise would have. An environment that would have killed us 2 years ago, we could be not just survive in, but we could be happy in. And that is capability. That's what it's all about. The 4th thing we're meant to do is we're meant to control our own destiny. In the short term, things are often not up to us. Life imposes itself. Competitors may show up and do things that surprised us. An employee might throw a wrench into things that we weren't expecting. The short term is not up to us, but the long term is much more up to us, because our long term is more a function of our capability and our choices and the people we've surrounded ourselves with. The short term is not. Today is not always up to us. We get a bad phone call and our day may be kind of ruined by it, but tomorrow is a little bit more in our control, and the next year is a little bit more in our. So those are the 4 things we are meant to do as human beings. The 4 things we're not meant to be. Number 1, we are not meant to be opinionless. When we share our honest opinion with other people, we find our tribe. We find the people that we can be ourselves around. Too often we think, well, I don't want to share my real thoughts because I might filter out people that disagree with me. Do we want to be challenged on our thoughts? Of course. But we don't want to be around people we cannot share our honest thoughts with. And a lot of times we die these quiet deaths in our life because we just won't share our real opinion. And I would look at those as a real intentional filter. It applies to dating, it applies to business, it applies to friendships. Share your real thoughts, because that's how you find your real people. The second is, we are not meant to be constantly available. If we go back to how people just have lived lives for thousands of years, these phones that we have, our social media that we have, like, our ability to connect on this and talk to each other is incredible. I love this. But we cannot let that sneak into our life and say, well, I will then be available to the entire planet 24/7. I mean, we leave our families when we go to work sometimes, and then we come home and then we let our work access it at home. And if we're not careful, we're never truly available to the people that we love the most. And that's not a good place to be. We are not meant to be available to everyone at all times. Not because we're so important, but because the life that you want to live and I want to live, it matters too. When that person calls us, what they're kind of saying sometimes is, hey, I have something that I would like you to do, or I have something that I'd like to impose on you. Not always in a Machiavellian evil way, but they have something that is on their mind. And it's okay to say, thank you, I love you, I also have things I need to do. And I'll get back as soon as I can. Number 3 is we're not meant to distrust our tribe. As we share our real opinions and we spend time cultivating meaningful relationships with others, we should be surrounding ourselves with people that we trust. That's not to say we should be naive about people's intentions in life. We've all had people not keep their promises or commitments, sometimes intentionally so, and sometimes because life is messier than we anticipated. But the reality is we should, over time, build a team and friendships and families that we can generally trust. If we can't trust many of the people that we interact with on a daily basis, that's probably a sign we should filter and build a little more intentionally, because we should generally be able to trust them. And then the 4th one is kind of a simple one, but we're not meant to be indoors all day. Like we're meant to get some sun. We're meant to be outside. We're meant to push ourselves a little bit. And I think in the same way, Binoy, that music can just impact our life. And for some reason, we can't really explain why music is like meaningful. Like we listen to a chord and we go, that is a meaningful, moving, emotional chord. And this other one is not. And we could dive into wavelengths and vibrations and harmonies and try and explain it. But at the end of the day, we don't really know. Certain chords feel good. Certain chords are fun. Certain chords are Metallica and other chords are Broadway. And it just is that way. And I think it's the same with some of these other truths. We're just not meant to be inside all day long. We're meant to be outside. We're meant to receive nutrients from the sun. We're meant to get sleep. We're meant to take care of ourselves. This whole fresh pie concept it's very real for all of us. And if we're not careful, we'll just overdevelop one category and then we wonder, why aren't we fulfilled? Well, because you're really hitting one of 6 or 7 or 8 categories in your life. And if we develop it comprehensively, we can find a lot more happiness than if we just try and grind the gears on one and say, well, I'll be happy if I become a billionaire, or I'll be happy if I receive this industry award. It's yeah, you'll probably be happier because you've accomplished something really cool, but you might not be healthy, and your kids might not care.
See, what an unusual, intelligent human being that straddles life philosophical questions with business, and it's just sheer physical outdoors kind of a will. That's not a common combo, right, Ike, to see this? So,
Yeah, I
Nate,
think-
wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. Bino and I had these discussions about what's the core value you have in life that you want to achieve, and then from there, and that core value may have many aspects in business, in family, in legacy, to the environment, to the community, tribe, like you said. And then we've been intentional about these areas. I think you have thought about it and built a formula of this thought process. And I think I would encourage our listeners to have that time, go think about all these, either emulate, Nate, your methodology, your principles to this, or at least try to create your own. Because once you create these, even if the first iteration is half of what Nate has, right? You have, Nate. It's a good start, and then as you experience more, and you can add more aspects of it. I'm saying this because some people prefer just emulating somebody else, but some people learn as they are building their own, and they need to make mistakes. They need to have the scars. Oh, I forgot this one. I need to add this. Going to gym or getting out, or crap, I forgot to ride my motorcycle. That needs to be part of equal to music, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just add those things.
Well, and you remind me, Ike, I heard once that the definition of intelligence is the ability to create the life that you want. And I love that definition a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It really isn't just about a collection of facts or insights alone. It's really are you really truly intelligent if you haven't built a life you want, or if you're not pointed that direction? Over time, when we're all 20 and we're starting out in our careers, none of us exactly have everything we want because we're trying to get better in every category and the game never ends, but we should be getting better. We should be getting like more of those categories with every change we make in our career and in our life. And I think that's what it's all about. So that when we get farther down the road, we can say, look, I've learned some stuff. I haven't been perfect in these categories, but I've been intentional about trying to be a whole person and not leave any of them too far behind.
Talk about a beautiful, deep thinking, caring man. Nate, thank you so much. We already ran out of time today. Wow.
Oh, wait, that went so fast, actually.
It went so fast. And I said, barely had time. Thank you so much for being on our show to help the rest of our listeners and watchers, right, viewers, see a little bit more of the magic of what life could be from the lens and the life you've already had and the life that you've created. Thank you for serving the community by saving us up in the mountains and the rivers and whatever, as well as giving such great advice to our founders as they are out there. Ike, anything else? We got to close up. We ran out of time.
Amazing. It was amazing. Thanks for being with us and sharing your thoughts, Nathan.
Awesome. Thank you both. That was a blast for me. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
We'll have to have you back again. We ran out of time. Okay. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. Please share this with others. We'd love for them to get the help and the insights, particularly the kind that Nate just brought to us. Please share this. Thank you so much. Until next time. Bye-bye.